This is the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best tips and strategies in the world to help you become a smarter, more effective tennis player. You'll hear interviews with Pro Tour doubles players and coaches, including easy-to-use lessons to improve your game and win more matches. My name is Will Bocek, founder of the Tennis Tribe, doubles strategy coach, and host of the show. In this conversation, I chat with Emma Doyle, the author of a new book called What Makes a Great Coach: Top 10 Practices of the World's Best Coaches. Emma is a tennis player, international tennis coach from Australia. She is a speaker. She's done a TEDx talk that we'll link to in the show notes. And then now an author. Like I said, she just released this book recently. And we talk about several of the practices in her book that make a great coach. And even if you're not a coach, there's three things I really want you to get out of this that's going to apply to you if you're trying to develop and improve your doubles game. So the first thing is it's going to make your relationship with your current coach better. She shares several questions and ideas and kind of strategies that you can use as the student to interact with the coach and to give them the information and the tools that they need to get the most out of you as a tennis player. So that's number one. Number two is it's going to help you find a good tennis coach. There's lots of questions, like I said, that she shares with us and things that you should be looking for in a good tennis coach. And then it will help you coach yourself as well as your partner. So it'll help your communication with your partner and also think about your own game and what you need to do to get the most out of your own abilities and your own kind of development process. So Emma has been studying this since 2016, and she's got opinions from Roger Federer, from Patrick Mouratoglou, from Nick Bollettieri, Gigi Fernandez, and a lot more. So it's a ton of knowledge kind of packed into one episode. So without further delay, I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Emma Doyle. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Emma Doyle on. Emma is a tennis coach, a tennis player, a speaker, and now an author. Emma, welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. We were just chatting a moment ago, and I guess we met like 5 years ago or so, and haven't seen each other since pre-COVID. And then I saw the other day on Twitter you're releasing this new book, and I knew it was going to be good. I haven't read through it yet, but I was able to read the intro and the start to it, and was definitely hooked, and planning on going through the rest of it here soon. But you've got this new book out, What Makes a Great Coach, forward by Judy Murray, testimonials from Nick Bollettieri, Gigi Fernandez, Emilio Sanchez, Patrick Mouratoglou. It's wild, the amount of praise that it's gotten already. And I want to go through all of this, but tell us what kind of inspired the book. How did this kind of get started?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for that. I still sometimes pinch myself. I'm just an ordinary person living an extraordinary life, and tennis being the vehicle. So thank you for that. I'm very humble moment. So what happened was, it was 2016 and it was the US Open, and I was doing some work in Locust Valley on Long Island, helping a club with their summer camps, how to run summer camps, coaching their coaches. And Roger Federer was playing in a pro-am, and he literally was walking from the tennis courts back to the helicopter. And I was like, I think he's going to walk that way. I think I've got 30 seconds to ask him my guiding question, a question that's I've always been inspired by, which is like, what makes a great coach? Like, how can I become the best coach possible? I've always, even as a player, how do I discover my inner coach as well? So that's important for all your players who listen as well. And anyway, I said, in one to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great coach? And he said, someone who listens. And I thought, I just wasn't expecting that. And from that moment, I then started a podcast where I started asking that question was my third question of every guest, in one to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great coach? So, Will, I'm going to ask you that. So I hope you're great, already ticking over. We'll get to your responses soon. But basically, this inspired some amazing research and I started to get great data. I kept asking anyone and everyone. And in the end, we had over 520 coaches, of which 16 were tennis players, and 7 of those were former world number ones. And then the rest were coaches. 328 were tennis coaches, 105 business coaches, and 71 sports coaches from over 21 different sports. So that's the background behind the research, of which I'm still collecting. So I'm sure the second edition will be over 1,000 coaches. But for now, I had to cap it somewhere. And so that was really the inspiration behind how the book got started. So it has been a 6-year journey for me. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah. I think the last time I saw you was in I think it was in Vegas at the USPTA conference, maybe. And I remember stopping by. I think I was on the way somewhere, and I stopped by and listened to you speak for a few minutes during your presentation. And one of the things that you said, I think this is what it was from, but it may have been somewhere else, and correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the things you said is it's not what you say, it's what they hear. I'm sure you go over this in the book, but can you elaborate on what that means? And if there's more to the quote, go ahead and expand on it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Look at me. I even know what page that's on.
Okay.
So
I remember that stuck with me when I heard that. I was like, oh, that's so well said.
And so, the coolest thing about the book is how many people have impacted my life. So it is my personal journey as well about becoming a coach, and the mentors who've impacted my life. So a lot of people may not have heard of this mentor, but Pete McCraw, who had a huge impact in my early days. So the quotes from him, he said on page 148, sorry, I'm just so proud. It just released, you could tell I'm still so excited. He said, effective coaching is not what you say, but what they hear, not what you show them, but what they see, not what you do, but what they do. In the end, the value is in how we communicate, so they come back time and time again. And that's practice number 9, communication.
Right. And I want to go over that one as well, but elaborate on what that means to you. Like where are coaches making mistakes with that, or,
so
go on.
Yeah. So basically, often when we start out as a young coach, we go to our default, which is the way that we learn, the way that we like to communicate, and the way that even maybe we played the game. If your style was all court, then you're very passionate about giving everybody an all court game style, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You can have your core philosophy, but one of the biggest moments that I had with myself as a coach is when I realized that a great coach coaches in the way that the person in front of them learns. My biggest aha moment was when I could only relate to half my players. So if you were extrovert and kinesthetic, then I was a pretty good coach for you. But if you weren't those things, I really didn't understand how to bring out the best in you. So it took me getting out of tennis and interestingly studying under open door coaching, which is what I do now. I mainly coach coaches in the workplace. And I work for this company teaching the Australian methodology of coaching, open door coaching. And I never forget when I got off court, I put my rackets away and I had to give a lesson where it was a coaching session where I wasn't allowed to give one directive command. I mean, imagine being, expert in angles of separation and pronation and, all
this
things.
technique.
Like I'm a subject matter expert. I know what I'm talking about. And I had to deliver. I wasn't allowed to give one direct command. I had to ask open questions and I had to keep peeling back the layers and I had to pull the information out of the player in front of me instead of pushing my map of the world, is what we say as a neuro-linguistic programming coach. Instead of pushing my map onto the player, I had to draw out see, that was an unforced error by me, not what I want for them, but what is best for them based on their motivations, needs, desires. In Australia, we call it their developmental readiness.
Sure. Okay. And is that's something we can do for ourselves as well, I imagine?
100%, because I think as players, if you think about from a player perspective, knowing why you're going to see a coach, knowing what you want in a coach, knowing what works best for you. How do you receive information best, and share that information with the coach so that they can increase their coaching toolkit to be able to bring out the best in you. Because so often players just go to coaches and, just say, tell me everything you know. But one of the beauties of asking questions, and especially as it relates to doubles, which I know a lot of your audience is listening for the doubles tips, is being able to understand who your partner is. So being able to communicate in a way where, if I understand my doubles partner's personality, it might be the difference between just getting to the point and saying things like, we can do this, like really fast, short, sharp tactics. Sure. Or somebody might need that warm approach. And before the match, they want to, like, if their dog had an operation last week, it's really important that you ask about how the dog is doing post-operation before the match, because that's important. And I've got a free YouTube clip, if you just maybe we'll put it in the show notes, but does your personality match your game style, is a great way to understand your partner, so that you can communicate effectively with them, with yourself, and with your coach.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely find that and put it in the show notes. A question came up for me that I wanted you to elaborate on from the intro of the book. You had a phrase in there called the curious champion mindset. Tell us a little bit about what that means and why it's important.
Yeah, so that's practice 8 in the book is curiosity. And notice we call them practices, not chapters. Because it's not like, oh yeah, curious, I do that, like tick the box. Or
done.
I do that, tick the box.
Fixed it.
And it's not best practice, it's next practice. So it's a continual evolution, such as listening, such as curiosity. So just my quick backstory on being curious. It's funny, I've always been like a super curious kid, but then as my coaching sort of developed, I stifled that, because I had a fear of looking stupid amongst many of my peers. Like, I was coaching at quite a high level, but I was still young. And so so I suppressed all my own questions in my head. Like, just, I wanted to know maybe, about a pathway of development or something I was doing. I didn't know if I was on the right track, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be embarrassed in case it was a stupid question in front of all my peers. And so that's something that, but by me being vulnerable in that story, I hope that other coaches and players take that, what I just said, and blow it out the window, because curiosity is a coach's superpower. And if you don't have a curious mindset, then you need to develop one. If you want to enjoy your tennis is a problem-solving game, which is what I talk about in my TEDx talk as well. And it reveals your character under pressure. So the more curious that you can get, even about the person on the other side of the net as you, if you are curious about when you hit that ball directly at their body down the middle, do they take forehand volley? Do they take backhand volley? Okay, get curious about them. Get curious about yourself. Get curious about your coach. Ask them questions and peel back the layers like an onion if you want to become the best problem-solving tennis player that you can be. And I'm talking about in practice. In a match, we can do that in between points, as long as we mainly do it tactically. But we don't want to be too curious when we're actually in the moment of striking the ball. Of course, if we're paralysis by analysis. So, but curiosity is one of the mindset of a champion coach. And again, if you're wanting to discover your inner coach, did that resonate with you?
Yeah, it did. And I think for me, I like to stay curious, like you said, during the points, probably not the best time, but between points a lot, and then also between games and between matches, right? And that's what I try to encourage our listeners to do, is to constantly kind of be asking themselves questions. Okay, which player on the other side of the net is weaker? Do they prefer their forehand or backhand return? Do they prefer to be at the net or the baseline, and so on? And then how can you kind of make them a little more uncomfortable? And if you can maintain that curiosity, then I feel like you can constantly be improving your strategy and your odds to win the match as well.
Yeah, and just on that note, what I work with my doubles teams on the change events, they've got three things they work through: past,
hmm
present, future. So
hmm
just a quick synopsis, and Darren Cahill, when I had him on my podcast, the
hmm
coaching podcast, he said that tennis is like a 2-game sprint. You sprint for 2 games. So the past, what happened in the last 2 games, the present, what's the score, but take the emotion out of the score. So it might be 4-3 or 3-4 as an example. And now the future, what's happening in the next 2 games, what do we need to do? Either do better or keep doing, keep
hmm
reinforcing. So I love that really simplicity of going through those 3 steps on the change of ends, and really and it's because it helps build practice 10 in the book, which is resilience. So
Okay.
it helps build your resiliency, because if you're curious, then you don't you're almost not excited, but you learn from failure. It's almost like, I'm
Right.
curious to know, if I had to play that player again, what would I do differently? Or if I had to play that team again, how could we adapt our game style to
hmm
to better expose their weaknesses, as you mentioned. And
hmm
so I think being able to bounce back, resiliency, time and time again, not just in the match, but also from week to week or season to season, is another one of the reasons why it is in what makes a great coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think curiosity also helps prevent anger potentially on the court. If you stay curious, you can't really get mad.
Mm.
Uh, and like you said, there's just so many other benefits. But
Yeah.
I want to go through.
Oh, could I just say one more thing on
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Go ahead.
Maybe people might find this one interesting. I
Yeah.
was working with a client recently, and they were really stuck, and they were like, I just can't, or I just don't know what to do. And I said, what if you were to go curious? Go being a verb. Just,
Mhm.
if instead of instead of trying to just work out what I was asking them, I was like, just go curious, because they
Mhm.
were trying to get the answer right. And in tennis, it's a game where perfection really doesn't exist. So, I just thought I'd mention that one. If you're stuck, if you're ever thinking, God, I don't know what to do with these opponents, just say, hey, what if we were to go curious and
Mm.
just think outside the square?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. So let's step back. Tell us your tennis story. How did you get started in tennis? You grew up in Australia, right? Just
Yeah.
tell people who may not know you.
Yeah, well, we sort of bounced back a little bit from the UK back and forward. And
Okay.
so when I was growing up, I'm really one of those people that love sports, like all sports. And
hmm
in the UK, I remember, just going around the neighborhood with the soccer ball and saying, I bet you can't kick the ball past me. It probably helped my volleys at the end of the day. But, sort of rounders and anything like cricket in Australia. And actually, I kick an AFL ball better than I play tennis. But girls weren't allowed to play AFL. We had to play netball back in the day,
Okay.
which I couldn't stand because you couldn't run with the ball. So I
Yeah.
really didn't like that. That sport didn't suit me. But anything with a bat and a ball, or anything with ball sports was my and I was sort of sports captain of my school, and etc. So, but as I was in the 12s, I wasn't really that good. So I started playing tennis. Not when we got back from the UK. I was 10, and I really was introduced because my parents were playing squash, and then they were getting too old for squash, so they started playing tennis, and so we just play as a family. So it started that way. So I started, I guess, quite late, you could say, in today's terms, but I did have that
hmm
early multi-sport foundation, which I highly recommend to all parents, of course. And so I
hmm
had this beautiful relationship with tennis where I joined this club, and it was the best thing that ever happened. Like, this club, wow, I mean, talk about an amazing atmosphere. You could rock up, you could hit with anyone, you just play points.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends today are still from that club, Maribyrnong Park Tennis Club. Chris Anstey went on to be an NBA basketballer. Joe Sirianni played on the tour for many, many years. His ranking was
Uh-huh.
up and down, but he played all the Grand Slams. Just an awesome person. And
And
anyway,
this was in Australia?
yeah, this was in Maribyrnong Park Tennis Club in Australia. And one of the
Okay.
girls' mums, she's sort of like, I don't know, like, if you won the club champs, we went to a dinner dance and we used to do performances. And but
Uh-huh.
just the club atmosphere, I think, is something that is not like it used to be. So I'm really glad I grew up in that time. And it does take a special person to run a like a real community based club, which I'm a huge believer in. So I had a really great experience. And so I guess, and I was quite small. And then I started to get taller, fitter, stronger. And all the girls that smashed me in the 12s, that by 16, they were sort of starting to maybe find other things, not tennis wasn't their chosen sport. So I sort of got better and better. But I started coaching when I was 14, and I walked off the court and I was like, this is the greatest job in the world. How could I become a coach? So when I got into sports coaching and administration, you'll hear the story in the book. It's one of the biggest turning points in my life. It was a famous footballer was our course coordinator at Deakin University. He pulls me into his office and I thought, oh God, what have I done now? Because I was in high school, I was sometimes in the principal's office anyway, that's for another podcast. But I basically, I was in his office. I thought, oh God, what have I done? And he said, do you want to become the best coach that you could be? And I was like, yes, like, what have I got to do? And he said, have you maximized your playing potential? And I was 18 years of age and I was a boxer-size instructor and I was fit and I was playing heaps of tennis and I was moving up, like playing grade 1 pennant. And he said, well, I said, there's this thing called, like I said, absolutely not. I haven't maximized my potential. And I said, there's this thing called US college tennis. Like, I've heard of it. I have no idea. I know a couple of people that have gone. I don't even know if I'm good enough. And I said, so I'm going to write away. And the first college that writes back to me, that's where I'm going to go. Like, I'll just write. So I wrote to 10 colleges that I knew other Australians. I put a VHS video in the mail. Do you know what a VHS video is, Will?
I do. I used to watch those.
Okay.
I'm not quite that young.
Yeah, but this guy calls me and he says, here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, we have a low crime rate. And I was like, Mom, what's a crime rate? I didn't even know what a crime rate was. So also as it relates to doubles, I just want to go back to when I was 13 or 14. I actually joined a pennant team, and I used to have to drive like 45 minutes on the other side of town. And I got in a team with like 5 ladies, like they were probably my age now, right? They were all really experienced players. And pennant in Australia, you play singles one week, doubles the next week. So 2 doubles, 1 singles match, 2 doubles, singles, doubles, singles, doubles. And I am so grateful, especially to this one woman, Gwen Wakeman, her name is, and she's retired now. She was a tennis coach as well. But she taught me from 13 really what the meaning of the word doubles was. And I think more juniors need to play with older people to understand the craft of doubles. And that of course in college, my best results were in doubles. And so I had a beautiful, and I loved being a part of a team. I mean, being on a team, being a part of a team, having 6 girls cheer for me. I went to visit last month my roommate in Canada, and she's now got 6 kids. But anyway, that's again for another podcast. But the camaraderie, I love that, and so that's my early sort of foundation. I'm so glad that I did that, because every girl that I played in college, whether singles or doubles, I'd be having this point with them, and I'd be like, she's just as good as me. How am I going to beat her? Whoever was mentally tougher, or whichever team was mentally tougher, was going to win, because I couldn't. I'm like, her forehand's pretty good, her backhand's pretty good. She's got pretty solid volleys. I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? And then I used to, really call upon my grit and say, well, who's prepared to stay out on this court 1 point longer, like 1 shot longer? And I'm so grateful. That just made me a better coach, especially at the highest level. I've represented Australia 20 times as a junior coach. Junior Fed Cups, junior world champs, and almost every single time it's come down to doubles. It's almost always been 1-1 in the singles, and the doubles has been one of the reasons why, especially I think as Australians, we can pride ourselves on having some pretty successful doubles teams, and I think we do teach it well. I think, especially at the orange stage, where kids fall in love with the shape of the court and they fall in love with transition. And I'm talking about orange stage, not even just orange level players. I mean, I'm coaching a group of beginner women and they're on orange stage. So ladies, and they're loving it. They're loving coming forward, because then, if they get hit, doesn't hurt really, does it?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point about the juniors. I feel like I still play some USTA like leagues and tournaments and stuff. And when I play in the the open draws, sometimes we'll come up against some juniors who are maybe 18 and going to play D1 or D2 or something. And it hasn't happened recently because I hadn't been playing as many tournaments, but in the past, I'd play these players who I know for a fact if we played singles, they'd beat me probably 1-1 in about an hour or less. But we can hang in doubles, and sometimes we'll win the match because they just don't know how to play doubles. I'm definitely a fan of the idea of getting juniors to play more doubles and understand it a lot better. I think it would help their singles game as well, for sure.
Well, Todd Woodbridge, I'm sure you know him. He said that he used to play singles, so it would help him see spots on the doubles court. He could see gaps and see spaces on the doubles court by playing more singles.
Yeah, it goes both ways for sure. So I want to go through. I picked out 10 of the. You said you call them exercises instead of chapters. Is that right? Practices, exercises. Thinking about school for some reason. I picked out 5 practices. We've already gone through a few of them that I want to go through and give people kind of a preview. So the first one is decision making. So talk to us a little bit about why that's important for a great coach, as well as, this is important for people trying to coach themselves, right? So let's talk about decision making a little.
Well, the reason it's actually in practice 1, because these are not in order. So over the 520 humans as part of the research, for example, passion was number 1 in terms of what makes a great coach, right?
Okay.
So decision making is not number 1, but it's practice 1. That is strategic. It is one of my core philosophies. As coaches, we still do not empower our players with enough decisions. I'm even talking about someone who walks in my door, a beginner. How can I empower them to make even 2 choices? Do they want to hit it high or low? Do they want to hit it forehand or backhand? Do they want to hit it short or deep? Do they want to hit with topspin or slice? Empower them with decision making and keep the decisions simple to begin with, for sure. Okay, but the better you make a decision, the better you will execute the shot. Your mind and your body is intrinsically connected. Make no mistake about it. And that's for the good and the bad, by the way. I've seen all sorts of psychosomatic stuff come up for players right before matches, in terms of headaches and stomach aches and by the neurology of what they're saying to themselves. I feel under pressure. I'm so under pressure. All of a sudden they start getting this headache on the top of the head. So with that in mind, you have to be able to understand that if your coach makes all of the decisions for you, if the ball lands here, you should hit it here, or you should always do this when the ball lands here. You want to train that within yourself so that when the ball comes, you're not thinking and your body knows what to do. All right. So you're training it when you have first start, you do need to think, yes, I need to do whatever it is that's specific to you. Maybe it's a cue word, but I do so much work with my players, and I used to when I was coaching a lot more on court, with just having them call out loud. All those calling drills, rally, attack, defend, just calling between you and your partner is going to help your decision making. And if that is not built in, then when you go to close a deal on a big corporate sales process, you're going to struggle. If you don't have these decision-making skills, your parenting is going to struggle. You need to understand how you make decisions, how you best make decisions, and the person in front of you. So even if you're a parent and you've got kids, are you just telling them what to do this, do that, and doing everything for them? Or are you empowering them to say, hey, what do you need to pack in your racket bag today? What is going to be important today? And drawing that out, which comes back to when I got out of tennis altogether and I did business coaching, is when I really learned the value and the power of pulling those decisions out of people, because it helps them in life. And again, as we've mentioned already, this tennis game is a problem-solving game. We have to invite decisions around problem solving. Otherwise, you will struggle under pressure unless your coach is there telling you what to do. And I don't know about you, but I'm not. I think maybe for one Grand Slam we can have coaching, but I'm a purist of the sport. I love the
Yeah.
fact that you have to solve it for yourself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you said if you're coaching a beginner, they come in and you want to help them or let them make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always thinking about, like, especially with, a lot of hot topic recently has been like pickleballs blowing up, right? So um how can we grow the sport of tennis? And I'm focused on doubles a lot, but when I watch coaches at clubs around here where I live and things like that, they've got their set program, and it's like they come in and, like you said at the beginning, they're kind of making the player play on their map, and they're not like drawing a map out of them. And I feel like if they can come up with a framework um, for making a few basic decisions at the beginning of each lesson or each clinic or something like that, not only will it help the player improve better, but it'll also get them more invested, I would think, right? Like if it's even like the parenting advice, like you said, if it's the kid's decision, the kid's going to be more likely to do it versus if you're just telling them what to do. And I think that could be really important for just growing tennis, right? If these coaches can start to allow their students to make decisions, then they'll be more on board with the lesson itself.
Correct. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, everything you just said there sings to my coaching philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit the nail on the head with regards to, we have to make the product of tennis fun. So if
Mm-hmm.
I've got 4 brand new beginners, then I've got sponge balls, and I'm putting them in the service boxes saying, right, just show me what you got. I'm not saying this is how you hold the racket. I'm not
Yeah.
starting with here's your unit turn that I all want you to follow because you don't know how to
Yeah.
hit forehand. I mean, I'm
Right.
sorry, but with a sponge ball in the equivalent of the kitchen, right, is
Mm-hmm.
just good coaching. Just stick them
Sure.
as close to the net as possible. Take away the net if you need to. Sometimes I do my warm up like more with a cardio style, where they're facing each other without even a net between the two people, with a
Yeah.
sponge ball, just saying, hey, tap it back and forward to each other. Show me what you can do. It's amazing how some people have come from another sport, or they can tap into their athleticism. But no matter what I'm working on, I always give the players a chance. Show me what you've got first.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's maybe work on something specific and help you in that area. But I'm going to give you a challenge or a mission, as I always like to call it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to let you explore the outcome of that challenge first to see if you can self-correct. I mean, that to me is, any coach that can do that, that's brilliant coaching. Instead of teaching topspin, you someone trying to get someone to swing from low to high, then just stick them close to the net and drop the ball knee high,
Yeah.
right? And ask,
Yeah.
see, I bet see if you can get it over the net, and maybe you do just tweak their grip slightly. But I think that, to me, that is the essence of, rather than, so many doubles teams they're so over prescribed. The coach has
Yeah.
said, oh, we've got to play one up, one back, or there's all these unspoken
I
rules
hear it
we
all the time. Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. And I just, honestly, if that is you and your partner, get curious about smashing all of those rules and throw them out the window,
Yeah.
and look at what is going to be the best rules for you and your partner, and design your
Right.
own blueprint. So I'm a big believer in that, which relates to curiosity, which relates to decision making.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Definitely.
coaches out there, and you yourself, if you go to a coach who's just telling you what to do the whole time, then under pressure, just check in, see how you're doing under pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going
Mm,
to be difficult.
mm,
Yeah, I see a lot of even some of the clinics that I do. Like I'll go to these clinics just to hit balls and stuff, and I'm not really looking for coaching because I mostly do just kind of coach myself as much as I can. But yeah, you'll hear all these balls. Oh yeah, uh, when the ball is here, you have to go down the line, and I'm like, well, not necessarily. Like, what if it's this player's here and this player's here? It's like it
mm,
depends. But yeah, is a lot of kind of over prescribing, like you said.
mm, mm-hmm.
So the next thing, or the next practice is number 3, purpose. Let's go over
Mm-hmm.
that one. What does that mean, and how should people think about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's super important because it's directly linked to motivation.
Hmm.
So if you do know what your purpose is, So just for example, why are you doing what you are doing? Or why do you go to coaching? Or why are you playing tennis?
Hmm.
If that rudder is if you have an intention and a mission and something that's greater than yourself, then working hard is easy. Training becomes enjoyable. Practicing with your partner will become a joy. If you
Hmm.
have just a higher purpose, if you're doing it, yes, for yourself, you might want to improve or you might want to help with your fitness level or your health. But if you've got something a little bit greater than just you, so it's you and your doubles team or it's you and the overall team, then your enjoyment of the sport will grow to a deeper level. And so
Hmm.
having a purpose is so important. Now let's look at training. If you and your partner are training together and you have an intention for that session, just one intention, maybe it's to enhance your communication together. By having a purpose, you can then reflect on it. Hey, how did we go with that? Or check in halfway. How are we doing with our purpose for this session? And as coaches, in everything we do, there must be an underlying purpose. If you don't have a purpose or you're just doing the same prescribed program and that's not specific to the people who are in front of you, then you're going to just go through the motions and you're going to get burnt out with coaching pretty quick.
Yeah.
So having an intention, having a purpose helps with motivation on all levels.
Is there, in this scenario, is there a difference between purpose and goals, or are they kind of interconnected? Talk about that a little bit.
It's a good question, and I don't think I really have a specific answer for you there. I think you'll laugh at this one. It depends.
Yeah.
So it depends on your personality. If you need someone who needs a specific goal,
Hmm.
if you're more of an auditory digital or my personality profiles, if you're the aggressive baseline of personality, you're going to need a goal.
Sure.
You're going to need to drive that goal. And if you're the consistent player personality, it's really cool when you team up with an aggressive baseliner because they're going to probably pull you along with their goals as well.
Yeah.
But if you have an overarching purpose together,
Hmm.
I think of an umbrella, and the
Hmm.
little arms of the umbrella are your own individual goals, but you've got an overarching purpose together, then I think that'll be, again, it'll help you just with your own little map of the world and your own direction. It'll help you
Sure.
get to where you want to go faster. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely into accelerated learning, accelerated growth. And, I'm super curious around how can I pick up things quicker. So
Yeah.
that would be one way. So check in with your own personality to know what type of goal you need to set and whether you need a purpose on top of that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing that came to mind for me was when I had Luke Jensen on the podcast. He talked about, I asked him about practice when he was on tour, and he said he would go out there and have his checklist. He'd have to hit 100 serves in the deuce court, 100 serves in the ad court, 50 returns, forehand, 50 backhand, and so on. And then he said his brother Murphy would just go out and hit balls and kind of feel things out. And then once he felt good, he was good,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
drove him crazy. But
yeah,
Murphy, Luke's approach drove Murphy crazy. So each one worked for themselves, for each other.
exactly.
And yeah,
Yeah,
it really is going to depend if you're, I guess, goal oriented or not.
yeah. So on that, again, check out that video to understand your partner.
Okay.
And also, I was going to say, it just escaped me, but something along the lines of, it's not one size fits all. Oh, that was it. Make sure
Yeah.
you ask your partner what
Hmm.
they need, especially before a match.
Yeah.
Everyone's so absorbed in themselves before a match, and even in the
Hmm.
warm up, they're so focused on themselves. So I think if you can know and ask your partner, hey, how do you like to warm up, and what do you like to do right before a match? Do you need to be by
Hmm.
yourself? You want to listen to music? Do you need me to be around me and energy? And then think
Hmm.
about what you need and see if you can find a balance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
one of my other doubles drills that I do all the time with all of my players, I call it the hotspot. So
Hmm.
just basically in the center of the court, that you meet in the middle of the court for plans between points. Because otherwise it's always usually one player walking over to the other player, and or the other player always walking over, or they just they just change sides like that and they don't talk at all. But I love that, meet me in the middle. So
Exactly.
that's an apology. I do have a husky voice as well. I am not a singer. I just couldn't help myself. I forget who sings that, but I love that song.
I don't know
You
either,
should
but I
throw
like
it
that
in.
song. It's a good song.
You should throw it in the middle of the podcast, just
We will.
where I sung maybe
It's
in the
going to
middle.
be the intro for this episode, I think.
Yes. Love it.
Yeah, that's true though. When I was just at the US Open last week, and the pro doubles teams, they always meet. Usually the server will go to where they're about to serve, and then the partner will go to kind of right in front of that baseline area, and they'll chat a little bit. And sometimes the net player is standing in front of the baseline, and sometimes they're just staring at the net and listening over their shoulder, like, okay, I'm going to serve wide, and we're going to do I, and you're going to go right. But sometimes, and I notice it more on kind of pressure points or in kind of tighter matches, they'll actually face each other, talk to each other, and kind of problem solve a little bit. So that's definitely a big thing as well. And the last one I wanted to ask about was we've talked about this a lot already, but communication.
Okay, so do you have a specific question around it, or because I could go in any direction?
Go in any direction you want.
Okay.
What do you think would be most helpful? So keeping in mind that these are doubles players who are looking to improve their doubles games.
All right. So let me just go to the section in the book, which is super useful. And that is page 144. And change your communication based on learning styles. So there are 4 types of learning styles. People learn best, obviously, visual preference. So players with that visual preference, they need to be shown the demonstration. Okay, they need to see it. They need to see how the pattern works. Auditory, they're going to prefer to hear the verbal cues, the sounds. It could be something as simple as when you hear this sound off somebody's racket, it's a good time to poach. There's obviously some of them inter crossover as well. The third one is kinesthetic. So those players that do not want you to stand there and tell your war stories about when you played doubles in 1960, whatever. They want you to they want to get on with it, and they're going to want to feel things, like grip, or it might be just certain things that you can do there. And then the last one, which not as many people know about, is called auditory digital. So some players learn best when things make sense to them first. There is a clear purpose, structure, and process that is backed up by facts and figures. So when you come across somebody like that, and maybe people listening might be going, oh, that is so my doubles partner. They're in love with the statistics. So know what works best for your partner, know what works best for you, and let your coach know. Hey, I read Emma's book. I'm thinking this is how I learn best. Yes, we're a combination of all 4, and a great coach will cover those 4 bases. But if you are taking a little bit more individualized instruction, I think a coach who can adapt that information in a way, if it's visual, showing the footage of great doubles teams and showing how to move. It's why I always have my whiteboard with me. I'll always just get that pen out and draw, in a group, so that people can see it, they can hear it, and then they can watch it, and then they can understand the process. People like to know where they're going. This is today. This is where we're heading in this environment today, and then allowing for the adaptability within that. But as long as you give them the structure, they'll run over hot coals for you. So I think that is something that's really dear to my heart. And there's some conflicting research around it, but I threw it in the book because, you know what, it's my book, so I get to say what has worked for me. I've been coaching since I was 14, and I'll never stop. You said at the start I'm a tennis coach. While most of my work now is actually in keynote speaking and corporate coaching, I will never stop being a tennis coach. Like I can't help myself. And you should, one of my clients, like I have a 4-year-old, I have a group of beginner ladies, and then I have a sort of a more advanced player. Like I love the fact that I'll just, it's in my blood. I never want to stop that being in me, because it constantly challenges the way that I coach, not just on the court but off the court. So anyone listening as well, if you're dealing with your children, if you a lot of people, I'm assuming, are going to have full-time jobs as well as playing doubles, a lot of your
Right.
listeners, right? So this information is critical if you want to be able to bring out the best in your workmates, your teammates. And how do you adapt your emails? Are your emails just always direct and to the point because that's just who you are and you're not going to change for anyone? Well, then you're only going to relate to a small percentage of the population.
Right.
So
you're trying to get everyone else to kind of fit your mold.
That's right. So it's important to reflect, look in the mirror, ask yourself constantly what works for me. I have a blueprint every season. When I worked at a large club, all my league ladies filled out their own blueprint. So it was a blueprint of, before a match, I like humor relaxes me, or humor makes me want to punch me in the face. It was kind of funny, sort of, it was all these things, how I like to be taught, how I like to be communicated with. This is what I like before the match. This is what I like after the match. And, and then I want to go out and have a few drinks with everybody, or what, just that building that team spirit is super important. It's, and maybe one more thing on communication, if we have time. Are you good?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So the Junior Fed Cup team I took away in 2018, it's a really cool success story, because I had 3 completely different personalities, right? So one was from far north Queensland. She was like super laid back. Then the next one was sort of half Russian, half Australian. She was like, divide, come on. She was like really intense. And then the other one was, she's a very skilled tennis player. And so she could win the first set 6-love, and the next set was love 6. And then in the third set, who knows? So I had to be my communication had to be very, very streamlined. But one of the things that we did is we did our values as part of a team first. And our values drove our behavior. So we were the incredible raging elephants, which stood for improvement, respect, and enjoyment. And we used those values. They weren't just words, but the behaviors were linked directly off each of those words. For example, this is maybe something really interesting for your doubles listeners. We had something called the PNO, which was our potential next opponent. We didn't always know when we were in a knockout stage. We didn't know who our next opponent was. But we, rather than not wanting to look at the draw, a lot of players, I don't want to look at the draw. I only look at one match at a time. Right. I think that's setting yourself up for failure myself. Yes, we're always expecting to win, and no, you shouldn't focus on the win. But for example, our PNO, potential next opponent, we would go and scout them out so that we were ready just in case we had to play either team. So that's an example of the behaviors that were set from the values. So at the end of the day, as the coach, I didn't have to say, well, why didn't we do this today? And how come we didn't scout? I just say, well, hey, who wants to talk about our our value of improvement? Did we live that today? And can we show examples of how we live that today? And that was one of the reasons I think why we were so successful, was the ability to adapt communication, and it was our ability to live by our values as a team. And I think that is something league tennis needs to do more of, to connect people together, and it comes back to purpose. Practice 3, having that higher purpose where we've got a little mantra that we're working towards. It works in corporate, it works in teams, it works in leagues, doubles leagues, mixed leagues, men, women, all genders.
Right. Yeah. That's a good story. I think there's like my dogs are barking. I think there's like an overarching theme for me here that I'm hearing, where you're constantly not prescribing information to people, and you're constantly kind of drawing things out of people, and that gets people bought in more. And even if like you're the coach and they're the players, really together you're kind of almost equals, and you're kind of a team, and you're just kind of providing a framework for to kind of get the best out of the team, and not necessarily telling everyone what to do all the time.
I love saying my definition of coaching, it's helping them learn rather than teaching them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not saying we don't have to teach. There are moments where we need to teach. So please don't get me wrong.
There's
I'm not
balance.
it is a balance, but most of the time I just see teaching pros teaching all the time.
Right.
And I don't see enough of the other side. And I know it's messy at the start. It looks messy. That kind of coaching looks messy, but if you trust it and you train it, actually, you said it, it sticks because there's more buy-in, and you'll perform with pressure, not under pressure. You won't be under pressure. You'll perform with pressure, moment and time again, and you'll build that resiliency muscle where you'll be so hard to beat. Rather than focusing on winning, you'll just become a winning machine. It's so it's beautifully ironic, but it's one of my favorite things to see in the development of people.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we could go on and on about this. I have a few last kind of rapid fire questions, and then we'll hop off in a couple minutes. What is your favorite tennis book other than your own?
What about my kids' book? We forgot to mention that one too. That's a fun one for 2 to 6 year olds. It's called "What Do I Wear on My Feet to Play Tennis?" The little character tries on a net for a shoe and a cone for a shoe, and
that's awesome.
Dr. Seuss little inspired. If anyone's got any 2 to 6 year olds out there,
okay, so we'll link to that as well.
Yeah, in terms of tennis, obviously, I'm sure people have said the inner game of tennis, but it is the one that had the biggest impact on my early coaching. And it 100% relates to the way that I coach. And to see my book next to the inner game of tennis was like one of my proudest moments on Amazon on the weekend. Awesome. So that's a good one. And I like books that are like Who Moved My Cheese and The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari and all those things that are not tennis, but they could be tennis. So I like those types of books that help you think outside of the square. Great.
What is your favorite tennis tournament?
The Australian Open.
Australian Open. And last question.
So accessible. I highly recommend everyone get down to Melbourne. It's easy to get in. You don't have to queue for hours and hours. Obviously, Wimbledon is a soft spot there as well.
Yeah. Australian Open is great though. Last question. How do we make pro doubles more popular?
Support it. Go along and support it. It's if we go and watch it, and if we go and be a part of it, then I think it'll get the kudos that it deserves. And there's some great characters. I think the role models are important. I think having like a Bethany Maddox-Sands, she's out there, and I like the way that she commentates and she sees the court, and so. If there's a role model who will follow them and support them, because it's not easy on the doubles circuit. But I took John Peers away when he was in the 12 and under Australian team. We played New Zealand, and and I don't know. Sometimes as the meeting those kids when they're so young, and now look at him doing so well in the Grand Slam doubles. It's so awesome to see that. So know who your country players are as well. So follow
that's a big one.
Follow your country, so then you can get behind them. And at the end of the day, what does it come down to? It comes down to doubles. You said, how are we going to grow the sport? Doubles is fun. Right?
It's what everybody plays.
and it's what everyone plays, and it's also make it easy. Coaches out there, please don't just make everyone serve volley if that's not what's going to help them fall in love with the sport. Yes, you can teach them that down the road, but always look at who's in front of you and give them the best possible experience.
Absolutely. Awesome, Emma. Well, this was a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll do a round 2 at some point, but everyone listening, we'll link to everything in the show notes, and definitely check out Emma's book. Or both books if you have kids as well. But anyways, thank you, Emma, again for coming on.
I appreciate you, Will. I know what it takes to put a podcast on, so kudos to you. It's not easy, but sharing information is another way that we continue to grow the sport. So thank you for making me a better coach today.
If you're a doubles player, you'll love our weekly strategy newsletter. Every Thursday, I send you my best doubles tips, tactics, and strategies that you can use in your very next match. And when you sign up, I'll also send you a free 20-page ebook that has my favorite doubles tactics for forcing errors and getting more easy volleys at the net. go to thetennistribe.com/newsletter to sign up now.